Hello again, and for today we are going to be talking about something that is kind of old. However, the more nothing has happened, the more I've kind of wanted to say my piece. And this is particularly about Paul Singer buying his way into Twitter, and lots of commentators saying that, oh, this might shake up Twitter, this might free all of these accounts that have been banned from the platform to essentially come back and be reinstated. However, I feel that none of this shit's going to happen, and it's very simple. But before we get into my points, we have to talk about Paul Singer himself. Now, Paul Singer is a hedge fund manager. He is known for starting the Elliott Management Group. He is also known in Washington circles as one of the top donors for Republican senators' campaigns. He is in many ways a right-wing George Soros, much like the Kochs. He is up in that echelon with people like Sheldon Adelson and the Kochs. He is just one of these kinds of figures like Foster Friess and the Mercers. However, Mercers are based, so I will not shit on the Mercers as much as I will shit on the rest of them. But Paul Singer is definitely one of these bad actors when it comes to money in politics. I would say that he is probably one of the worst. And you saw this when Tucker Carlson covered him before this whole story kind of bubbled up to the surface. And I don't remember the exact context other than like revealing to the American people who Paul Singer is. However, what Paul Singer did, and this is going to roll into my first point, is that he, at one point, would participate in this practice of vulture capitalism, where he'd engage with governments of smaller stature to the United States and get them involved in lawsuits, so that way he can essentially undervalue and sell their goods. And this, of course, is vulture capitalism. But here in America, he did that. He did that to the Cabela's Hunting Group, which is a well-known seller of goods related to hunting. You know, you see these giant mega Cabela stores in certain parts of the country. I believe they're now bought by Bass Pro Shops, who Paul Singer ended up selling Cabela's to. And why Paul Singer got Cabela's to get bought was because he convinced the board that they needed to be sold. And what Bass Pro Shops ended up doing was just cutting corners completely. And this practice of vulture capitalism that he engaged with Cabela's not only ruined the company, but it ruined the town of Sidney, Nebraska, which was Cabela's number one employer of people, because Cabela's was started in Sidney, Nebraska, and it was built up into this giant company in that town. And no one did shit. No one said anything. Why? Because Paul Singer is a mega donor. He is part of the donor class. And this is the first point as to why I do not think he will solve the problems of political censorship on Twitter.com. And it's simply because he will just make it benefit him rather than benefit, the people that actually use the website. And again, he is not an honest actor. So we have to always take that into consideration. And the second point I would say that really damns him as far as his motivations for getting into the Twitter board to try and oust Jack Dorsey is that he has no previous free speech stance. He does not really give a shit about free speech. And the people who are putting this onus on him that he's this, corporate activist or activist investor, I believe it says on his Wikipedia, is because he is just doing this so that he can stake his interests into Twitter. And speaking of his interests will always outweigh other people's interests, which is the third point as to why I feel like this is not going to go well for us dissident right-wing people. I mean, if you look at who Paul Singer funds, it's predominantly neoconservative politicians. It's definitely establishment Republicans. These guys who are essentially called rhinos, and they do nothing, and they're neocons. And again, it's like, he is part of the problem. So why would you think that he would want to be part of the solution? This is beneficial for him to have these dissident right-wing people shut out, and the only people who get propped up are people who essentially spout the opinions that he wants to hear. Paul Singer is very much like Charlie Kirk in that he is not interested in what the little guy wants. He is interested in what he wants. And again, like, why would you trust this? This guy is clearly in it for himself. He is not in it to win it. He is not in it for the greater battle of ideas. He is not there to protect free speech online. And, for him, you guys doing that, you commentators who are saying that Paul Singer is going to save Twitter, it's just good publicity for him. You are just propping up his bullshit. And for people like Sargon of Akkad and Tim Pool specifically to be saying this while, they claim to be these, not these free speech warriors, but these people who want to fight for the little guy, it's like, you don't understand who Paul Singer is if you think he's going to fight for the little guy. Spoiler alert, fellas, he's not. And it's very clear through his actions and through a lot of his decisions that he's made in his career that he is always in it for himself. And so I say to you, be careful of who you associate with. Be careful of who you prop up. This is part of the raging optics wars. Is, you have to understand who you're backing. It's really strange to me how these guys will go around saying that, like, oh, I want to help people, and then prop up people who definitely don't want to help people. So again, you just have to be aware of what is going on in the world and make sure that you are aligning yourself with people who definitely do want to make a positive change. You do not want to be associated with people who are grifters, who are part of the merchant right, who are part of the donor class, who just want to make money for themselves and then get the fuck out of there as fast as possible, because it's not going to help you in the long run. So I'm going to wrap this up. It was kind of short, and I'm sorry that I have not gotten to do a lot of commentaries. I was kind of busy doing stuff for myself this past week, and to be frank, the Groiper Wars commentary that I had dropped that was, like a half hour long really took a lot out of me. But rest assured, there's lots of content to come this week, and end of housekeeping. So let's wrap up this commentary just by stating the points that Paul Singer will not save Twitter. He ruined companies before and countries. He has no previous free speech statements or stances, and overall, his interests will always outweigh the interests of the American people. So, to the donor class, to the merchant right, if you do not respect the will of the people, you better tread lightly, or history will be doomed to repeat itself.